It was supposed to be a routine traffic stop, the kind that happens every day. But what unfolded on that quiet street would leave everyone involved stunned. A young white police officer, full of confidence but blind to his own assumptions, spotted a sleek black SUV cruising through the neighborhood. Something about it didn't sit right with him. Maybe it was the tinted windows. Maybe it was the driver, a middle-aged black man dressed casually. Whatever the reason, he flicked on his lights and pulled the car over. As he stepped out, his heart pounded with adrenaline. He had done this 100 times before, and today was no different, or so he thought. With a firm voice, he barked commands. License and registration. The driver calmly complied, reaching for his wallet. But the officer wasn't interested in small talk. He was focused, convinced he had the upper hand. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. The driver hesitated for a moment, then sighed, unbuckled his seatbelt, and did as he was told. He knew exactly where this was going. Standing face to face now, the officer's tone turned sharp. He questioned the man like a suspect, his words laced with assumptions. But then something shifted. The driver, patient yet unwavering, reached into his back pocket and pulled out something unexpected, his badge. Not just any badge, a captain's badge. The young officer's face paled, his confidence crumbled. The very man he had been treating like a criminal was not only a fellow officer, but outranked him by miles. And that's when everything changed. What happened next left the officer speechless, and the captain with a choice that could alter both of their lives forever. Stay tuned, because what unfolds from here is nothing short of shocking. The street was silent, except for the sound of the officer's heavy breathing. His mind raced as he stared at the badge in the man's hand. It wasn't fake. It wasn't some cheap replica. It was real. And the words on it made his stomach drop. Asterisk, asterisk, police captain, asterisk, asterisk. The captain held his gaze, his expression unreadable. He had been in law enforcement long enough to recognize that look in the young officer's eyes: fear, embarrassment, and something else. A realization creeping in, slow but undeniable. The officer swallowed hard, his grip tightening on his belt. He fumbled for words, his confidence slipping away. Just moments ago, he had been in control. Now, he was standing in front of a superior officer, realizing he had crossed a line. The captain let out a slow breath. "What's your name, officer?" His tone was calm, but there was weight behind it. "Oh, Officer Reynolds, sir," the young cop stammered. "Officer Reynolds," the captain repeated, nodding slightly. "Do you know why you pulled me over?" Reynolds shifted on his feet. He knew what he wanted to say, but suddenly, everything he thought made sense didn't anymore. Was it really just the car, the tinted windows, or was it something else he didn't want to admit? I thought there might be suspicious activity," he muttered. The captain raised an eyebrow. "Suspicious how?" The question hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. Reynolds had no good answer. His training told him to trust his instincts, but now those instincts were being challenged. A car passed by slowly, the driver glancing at them before continuing down the street. The captain noticed it. He knew what it looked like: a white officer stopping a black man, voices tense, body language stiff. He had seen scenes like this play out too many times, and he never thought he'd be in one himself. Reynolds cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. "Sir, maybe we should just forget this happened." But the captain shook his head. "No, Officer Reynolds, we're not just going to forget this." And in that moment, Reynolds knew this was far from over. The street felt colder now, even though the sun still hung in the sky. Officer Reynolds shifted uncomfortably, his fingers twitching at his side. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, making it harder to breathe. The captain, standing calm and composed, studied him, not with anger, but with something even more unsettling: disappointment. "Walk me through it," the captain said, his voice steady. "What exactly made you think I was suspicious?" Reynolds opened his mouth, then closed it. He had reasons, didn't he? The car, the neighborhood, the way the driver looked. But now, under the captain's gaze, every justification felt flimsy. His mind scrambled for something to say, but nothing sounded right. The silence stretched. The captain finally sighed and put his badge away, but his eyes never left Reynolds. "How long have you been on the force?" "2 years, sir," Reynolds answered quickly, as if the response might somehow redeem him. 2 years. The captain nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "And in those 2 years, how many times have you pulled someone over because you had an asterisk feeling asterisk?" Reynolds hesitated. He knew the truth, but saying it out loud was different. I don't know." The captain nodded again, as if he expected that answer. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Let me ask you something, Reynolds. If I were a white man, dressed the same way, driving the same car, would we be standing here right now?" Reynolds' stomach tightened. His mouth felt dry. He wanted to say yes. He wanted to believe that. But deep down, something told him the truth wasn't so simple. A radio crackled in the patrol car, but neither of them moved. Across the street, an older woman peered out from behind her curtain, watching them. Reynolds knew how this looked. He knew what people would assume. The captain followed his gaze, then shook his head. "This moment, right here, this is why people don't trust us." His words were sharp, but not cruel. "Just honest. You ever think about that?" Reynolds clenched his jaw. He had thought about it, but not like this. Not with himself in the middle of it. The captain sighed again, rubbing his temple like a man who had dealt with this too many times before. "You got a choice, Reynolds. You can walk away from this and pretend it never happened. Or," he paused, letting the weight of his words sink in, "or you can learn from it." Reynolds swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" The captain studied him for a long moment. I'm not filing a report." "Not yet, but that doesn't mean this is over." Reynolds' heart pounded. He should have felt relieved, but instead, a new kind of fear settled in, because now he wasn't just facing a mistake, he was facing the truth. And the truth had a way of changing everything. Reynolds felt his pulse hammering in his ears. His instincts told him to walk away, to nod and say, "Yes, sir," and put this behind him. But the captain's stare held him in place. There was something about the way he said asterisk, "This isn't over asterisk." It wasn't a threat. It was a challenge. A voice crackled over the radio again, snapping Reynolds out of his thoughts. His partner was checking in. He glanced at his car, tempted to respond, to shift the moment away from the tension pressing down on him. But the captain wasn't giving him an escape. He stood firm, waiting. Then the captain did something Reynolds didn't expect. He pulled out his phone and started dialing. Reynolds felt his stomach drop. Who was he calling? His superior? Internal affairs? His heart pounded as he fought the urge to stop him. But when the captain finally spoke into the phone, his words caught Reynolds off guard. "Yeah, it's me," he said. "I need you to come down here, now." Reynolds frowned, confused. The captain wasn't reporting him. He was calling someone in. But who? Minutes passed, dragging painfully slow. The air between them grew heavier. Reynolds shifted on his feet, trying to shake the unease growing inside him. The captain just stood there, arms crossed, unreadable. Then a car pulled up. Not a patrol car, but a sleek black sedan. The door opened, and out stepped a man in a sharp suit, moving with a kind of confidence that made Reynolds feel even smaller. Reynolds stiffened. He recognized him immediately. Asterisk, Deputy Chief Sanders, asterisk, one of the highest-ranking officers in the department. His throat went dry. This wasn't just a lesson anymore. This was something bigger. The deputy chief walked straight to the captain and shook his hand. Then he turned, eyes locking onto Reynolds with an expression that sent a chill down his spine. "You must be Reynolds," Sanders said, his voice calm but firm. "I hear we need to have a conversation." Reynolds didn't dare move. His mind raced with possibilities. Was this the end of his career? A formal reprimand? Worse. The captain finally spoke, his voice quiet but carrying more weight than any shouting ever could. This is the part where you decide what kind of officer you really want to be. Reynolds swallowed hard, realizing there was no turning back now. Whatever was about to happen next, it was going to change everything. Reynolds' hands felt clammy as he stood there, trapped between the captain and the deputy chief. He could feel the weight of their eyes on him, like they were peeling back every layer of who he thought he was. The street around them seemed to shrink, the noise of passing cars fading into the background. Deputy Chief Sanders took a step closer. "Tell me, Officer Reynolds," he said, his voice measured. "If we pulled the body cam footage from this stop, would it match the story you'd write in your report?" Reynolds' stomach twisted. He knew exactly what the footage would show: his rigid posture, his sharp tone, his impatience, the way he had assumed control without cause, and the way the captain had calmly shattered his confidence with nothing but the truth. He opened his mouth, searching for an answer, but before he could speak, the radio in his patrol car crackled to life. "Unit 23, we have a disturbance reported at the corner of Lexington and 5th. Possible altercation. Backup requested." Reynolds exhaled, relief flooding him. This was his chance. An out. Something real, something urgent. "I should respond to that," he said quickly, reaching for his radio. But the captain raised a hand. "No." Reynolds froze. "Sir, it's a backup call." "I know what it is," the captain said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were locked onto Reynolds like he was testing him. "Another unit will take it. You stay here." The rejection hit hard, and for the first time, Reynolds felt something new: doubt. Not in them, but in himself. The captain didn't trust him to handle a simple call, and maybe, for the first time, Reynolds was starting to understand why. Then the second twist hit. A car rolled up to the curb, an older model sedan with tinted windows. The engine idled for a second before the door swung open. A woman stepped out, late 40s, sharp eyes, and in her hands a folder. The captain turned to her and nodded. "Thanks for coming." She barely glanced at him before setting her eyes on Reynolds. "Officer Reynolds," she said coolly, "we need to talk." Reynolds' heart skipped. This wasn't just some random official. He recognized her now. ***, Detective Lisa Monroe ***, Internal Affairs. His mouth went dry. "What's this about?" Monroe handed the folder to Sanders, who opened it and flipped through the pages. He scanned them quickly, then looked up. "You tell me," Sanders said, holding up a document. "Because according to this isn't the first time you've made a stop like this." Reynolds' blood turned to ice. The captain crossed his arms. "I wanted to believe this was a mistake, Reynolds. But now we've got a problem." The air around them tightened, the silence louder than any siren. Reynolds' pulse pounded in his ears. This wasn't just about today anymore. This was about his past. And if they had proof, real proof, then he wasn't just fighting for his career. He was fighting for the truth. Reynolds' breath caught in his throat as the weight of the moment crashed over him. He could feel the sweat gathering at his collar, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. This wasn't just a conversation anymore. It wasn't just a mistake. It was an investigation. His mind raced. How could they have anything on him? He had always followed protocol. At least, that's what he told himself. But as Sanders flipped through the file, his stomach twisted. Monroe took a step forward, eyes sharp. "We've reviewed multiple stops you've made over the past year," she said. "Patterns don't lie." Reynolds shook his head. "What patterns?" She pulled a page from the folder and held it up. "Traffic stops initiated without probable cause. Reports that don't match body cam footage. And in every case, the drivers look a lot like Captain Johnson here." The words hit like a slap. His chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but his mind kept replaying moments, split-second decisions, gut feelings, stops that felt routine. Asterisk asterisk had he been doing this all along without realizing it asterisk asterisk. The captain watched him carefully. You're not the first officer to get caught in this cycle, Reynolds. And I know you think you were just doing your job. He paused. But tell me this, if nobody stopped you today, how long before this turned into something worse? Reynolds' pulse pounded in his ears. His whole career flashed in front of him, every badge he had ever polished, every oath he had ever sworn. He had never thought of himself as the problem. But standing here now, faced with evidence, he wasn't sure anymore. Then, Monroe reached into the folder and pulled out something else. A photo. She handed it to him without a word. Reynolds hesitated before looking down. His stomach dropped. It was a still image from body cam footage, not from today, but from a stop months ago. A young black man standing outside his car, hands raised, fear in his eyes. And the officer in front of him. Asterisk asterisk Reynolds asterisk asterisk. His own voice echoed in his head. Asterisk asterisk step out of the vehicle. Asterisk asterisk. The memory crashed back. He had stopped the kid for a broken taillight. But looking at it now, the way he had spoken, the way he had escalated, it wasn't about the taillight, was it? The captain's voice was quiet but firm. You need to decide, Reynolds. Are you going to be the kind of officer who learns from this, or the kind who pretends it never happened? Reynolds felt like the ground had been ripped out from under him. His entire career, his entire identity, was hanging in the balance. He could fight this. He could deny everything, push back, walk away. Or he could face the truth. A long silence stretched between them. Then finally, Reynolds took a slow breath, his hands unclenched. And in that moment, he made his choice. But just as he opened his mouth to speak, a voice cut through the air. Officer Reynolds. They all turned. Standing on the sidewalk was the young man from the photo, the same one Reynolds had stopped months ago. And the look on his face said everything. The story wasn't over yet. Reynolds felt his chest tighten as he locked eyes with the young man. He looked different now, not just older, but more sure of himself. There was no fear in his stance this time, only quiet recognition. The street felt eerily still as everyone waited for what would happen next. The captain turned to the young man and gave a small nod. I asked him to come, he said, glancing at Reynolds. I thought you should meet him again, under different circumstances. Reynolds' throat felt dry. He wanted to say something, but what could he say? Asterisk asterisk sorry asterisk 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 didn't mean to asterisk asterisk, none of it felt like enough. The young man took a step